Scheduling Alliance is final, and transfers have begun. Let's talk about it.
Conference realignment is always in the news, so we're back on the Big Mountain, where we bring you a detailed focus on the Big Ten and the Mountain West.
How you doing again? I am JY. This is my good friend Steve. Steve, we're going to go back to the Pac-2 here and the Mountain West. I want to talk about two things in this episode. Won't be too long. I want to talk about the Scheduling Alliance, which now is finally, after much rumored, it is finally final. I also want to look briefly at some of the transfers coming out of both Oregon State and Washington State. Some big ones have already hit the portal. We'll see what else comes here. But let's start with the Scheduling Alliance. I want to talk about what is it, what isn't it, and, how is it kind of being, I'm going to call it spun. That might be a little heavy of a word, but, how are these two sides kind of saying what it is and what it isn't? So, on Friday, December 1st, we learned, finally, after, again, much rumors and speculation that this was coming, that the alliance between the Pac-2, that's Oregon State and Washington State, and the Mountain West was finalized. Yep. And it's very similar to what we talked about in our last episode. So it's a kind of a 7-1 model for the Mountain West, where the Mountain West in conference play will be 7 games in conference plus 1 against Oregon State or Washington State. That does not count against their Mountain West schedule. Mm-hmm. And it says that both Oregon State and Washington State, they're going to play these 6 Mountain West games. They'll do 3 home games and 3 away games. And it has also been said that the Mountain West is to receive $17 million from these two schools in terms of having this alliance just for this 1 year. I want to break down a little bit more as to how it's kind of being reported here, because you're hearing it being talked about a little bit differently from the two sides. So the Mountain West, I'm going to talk a little bit specifically about how their press release talked about this. They say it's a unique opportunity for Oregon State and Washington State to still play against highly competitive Mountain West teams. This scheduling agreement expands their footprint, the Mountain West footprint, and also enhances their national brand. It strengthens the league's non-conference schedule. 100% accurate. That's exactly, I think, what it's doing. And, oh, by the way, we get $14 million to do that as well.
Nothing wrong
so
with it.
Win-win-win there if you're the Mountain West, in my opinion. Let's talk a little bit about what's coming from specifically the OSU AD, and I want to get back to the Beaver Blitz and some things we talked about 2 episodes ago. What I talk about, and I didn't use her name last time. I'm going to use it this time. Everybody knows who we're talking about. Yeah. Angie Machado, that's who it is. I got nothing against Angie. I know we got some people saying, oh, she's actually a good person. You should have her on the show. Maybe someday we will. I'd love to maybe talk with her on the show.
I heard she's a great real estate agent.
I heard that as well. Yes. So anyway, let's go to, Steven. So let's go to A.D. Barnes. He said just before this came out, he was making talk about, they're still refocused on rebuilding the Pac-12. So their side of it, you heard what I said about from the Mountain West side, that it's a great scheduling alliance, their branding, and blah, 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 blah. So the other side, if you will, the A.D. Barnes is saying they're still looking to rebuild the Pac-12. They want to have a model, as he called it, a model of 5 P5, 6 Group of 5, and 1 FCS. The FCS is already on the schedule, so there's nothing really they can do or change there. I believe it's Idaho for Oregon State, if I saw that correctly. So the 6 Group of 5 for him is this alliance. Now, he's not really calling it an alliance. He's just saying, we're going to play 6 group of 5 schools. Well, obviously, it is this alliance. It's with the Mountain West. And I want to go back a little bit to what Angie had said. This was several weeks ago when she was kind of pushing back on some of the reports of this alliance happening. She specifically said they're not going down and being the Mountain West. Going down, meaning going from a P5 to a Group of 5 conference. They're not going to be going down and being part of the Mountain West. At that time, her sources tell her that the alliance is not part of their first plan of attack. I kind of, I hit her kind of hard on some of this stuff. I'm not looking to do that again. I just want to kind of play it off of where they're at versus what the Mountain West is saying. She also went on to say that would be down the list, meaning this alliance would be down the list and kind of a last resort. What they want is exactly what A.D. Barnes said, is a 5 P5, 5 to 6 group of 5, and 1 FCS school. And according to her, an actual alliance would lead to a reverse merger would be a bad scenario for Oregon State and Washington State. But she would be okay at that time if they played a few games. To me, a few games means 2 or 3, 1 or 2, 2 or 3, something like that. She also then went on to say that the plan is to not have body bag schools or body bag games, but enough of a strength to schedule in order to get a potential at-large bid in the college football playoffs. And I totally get that. Of course they want to be able to have an
some
at-large
kind of path
bid.
to that.
Yeah. So let me break this down real quick, Steve, and then I want to get your thoughts. So, again, to me, it's kind of how I'm going to say being spun. I don't think it's spun. I just think it's how they're looking at it. Really, the Mountain West is looking at this for what it really is, quite frankly. It is an alliance with Oregon State and Washington State that they get to play 6 games against these schools, whereas Oregon State and Washington State, I think, is being a little careful in calling it an alliance with a group of 5 conference, because it doesn't want to look like, to Angie's point from a couple weeks ago, that they're playing down to a group of 5 schedule. So they're trying to make sure they say, we're still going to maintain 5 Power 5 schools. Now, one of those clearly is going to be against each other, assuming they think they're going to continue to be at a Power 5 status in a 2-member conference, taking a little bit of a shot there, so I apologize, Beavs and Cougs fans, but one of those 5 is against each other. Yeah. You would expect another one of those 5s to be the in-state rivalry, Washington State, Washington, Oregon State, Oregon. Mm-hmm. Now, as of right now, only one of those is a definite for next year, or close to a definite for next year. I'll get to the Oregon State one. That's not as close to a definite. Angie actually talks about that. But let me break this down real quick, because I think when I thought about this, I'm like, well, this makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. So for next year, Oregon State and Washington State will be playing each other. Mm-hmm. That's one game. They're going to play 6 games against the group of 5, a.k.a. the Mountain West Scheduling Alliance.
Yep.
They're going to play 1 game against an FCS opponent.
Okay.
And then they'll play 4 other games against Power 5 schools. Okay?
Okay.
The Mountain West schedules, now I'm going to broad brush this. They're not obviously all the same schedule. But the Mountain West schools, they're going to be playing about probably 7 to 8 games against group of 5 teams. They're going to be playing probably 3-ish Power 5 teams, and probably 1, if they get an FCS school on their schedule, 1 FCS team. Mm-hmm. So we're really talking about a difference of 2 Power 5 games between these two schedules. I mean, compared to what is now the Power 4 conferences, they're going to have a difference of 4 or 5 games, because they're playing an 8-game conference schedule, right?
Right.
So I hate to say this to the Beavs and the Cougs, but when you look at that, they're much more closer to a schedule of what Mountain West schools are going to be playing than what and any independent, right? Not just the Beavs and Cougs, but any independent. Right. Throw BYU into that, throw all these independents into that, versus what a conference Power 4, now we'll call it Power 4 conference schedule is going to be looking like. So in my opinion, back to what is it, what isn't it? It is clearly an alliance. Yeah. Whether you want to call it that or not, they're getting games, they're getting money for these games. The Mountain West is 100% an alliance, no doubt about it. It's not just a few games, is what was talked about before. And technically, I guess at this point, everybody's kind of right. Like Angie was kind of right. We were kind of right. It's 6 games against a group of 5 team. The Mountain West, and what I was calling it an alliance, which in my opinion it is, versus, well, no, it's just 6 group of 5 teams. Yeah, Angie was right too. She said, hey, we're gonna play 6 group of 5 teams. Okay, that's what you're doing. So I couldn't say she's wrong with this, but it's clearly an alliance with the Mountain West.
Yeah.
So what do you have to say, Steve?
So first of all, I think it's a great move by both the Mountain West and these 2 teams. I would have loved to see this, as I mentioned in the last video that we talked about this, I would love to see this for 2 years, but I think it's a great move for 1 year now. Can be a bridge. I have a strong sense that it will grow into probably at least 2 years to build a bridge, because they have 2 years that they can operate as a conference, just the 2 of them.
Yeah.
Per the NCAA. So I think it's a great thing overall. You and I, ever since the first rumblings of this scheduling alliance came out, We've been on top of this, and we said it was a great thing. In general, I don't really think that it matters so much what you call it. As far as from my perspective and from decision makers' perspective, they're going to be playing a kind of a partial Mountain West schedule, and they're trying to keep enough other games on the schedule that they feel like they can give the best path where they can compete for a not an auto bid but an at-large bid into the college football playoff.
Yeah.
Now, I've been pretty clear the whole way. I think that you have two different. You have to, when you talk about Oregon State and you talk about Washington State, there's two different parts, and you have to break it off. One, you have the decision makers.
Right.
The coaches and the ADs are not decision makers.
Yeah.
They are basically the head of the sales department. Okay. The AD and the coach are selling a certain product to their fans and to recruits, which is the talent, the lifeblood of college football.
Yeah.
So the president is like the CEO of the company, whatever, and it's he or she their job to basically make the best deal for the organization and for the student athletes there. Mm-hmm. And I have absolute faith in both Oregon State and Washington State, their leadership so far, that they are making the best of the situation, making the best decisions that's going to be for their organizations and for the student athletes there. I think you mentioned Schultz was very clear. He called it a scheduling alliance.
He did.
Obviously, the AD, he's trying to be careful with the words, and he's using the word model. And for me, I see when he's talking about model, he's talking about their entire schedule, scheduling model.
Yeah.
Which part of that model is a scheduling alliance with the Mountain West.
Right.
Whether you want to say the word or not,
right.
or agreement or alliance, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Part of it is an agreement with the Mountain West to play a certain amount of games against Mountain West teams. Yeah. And it's obvious that they want to also add enough maybe marquee teams from other conferences, other big-name conferences, other big-name programs that gives them a viable path to compete for that at-large bid, which I think is really smart.
Yes.
I think both sides are doing well. Now, here's the thing is, and obviously, and a lot of our Beaver fan viewers have told us, Angie is plugged in that program. She has... and so far, really, nothing that she said has been wrong, like you said. It's just, I think it's kind of a perspective of her, and I think it rubs Mountain West people the wrong way when she talked about playing, like, going down to the Mountain West or whatever. And so I don't doubt that she has really good, reliable sources within the Oregon State program. My guess is that those sources are within the athletic department, connected to either the AD or the coach, and they have a certain way that they want to spin things to the media that puts them in the best possible light to sell their program to fans who are going to need to buy those tickets to put money into the program. And I don't think they have a problem with that at Oregon State. They have a great fan support. But also the very important thing to recruits. Recruits want to know they're coming to a program, a top-tier program. The best recruits want to come to the best tier of programs to have a chance to play in the playoff, to get on TV, and get to the NFL someday. So, what they're doing is kind of, it's really sales. It's sales and marketing. Now, they have to do a little song and dance because of my last point on this, and it's a point that I've made before. I know I'm repeating myself. They have to do it because there is still this understanding within the college football community, and it's incorrect. There's the impression that there is still there's still Power 5.
Right.
Not only is there, obviously, with the Pac diminishing down to 2, and not only is there not a Power 5, there's not even a Power 4 anymore.
Yeah.
Something I've been consistent on. I believe that we are now entering a time, and especially in the near future, where I think that you'll see the ACC start to be poached, where we're entering a time frame where there's going to be the Power 2 and everybody else. But not everybody understands that yet. The media hasn't fully bought on that. The recruits don't understand that. So they have to do this kind of two-step, double dance, whatever. In my opinion, and maybe I'm giving them too much credit, I do think the leaders, the decision makers at Oregon State and Washington State do have an understanding. And I think they view this as a kind of a bridge, that the Mountain West is their best home. The presidents have talked about regionality and all that. That they view this as the best bridge to get them to, 2 years from now, when we have a 12-team playoff, and it's very clear with those programs going to the Big Ten and the SEC that we have 2 power conferences, and everybody else, all the other conferences and programs, are fighting and competing for those extra spots to be the best of the rest.
Yeah.
So to me, I think that's a big part of what this is they're forced to play this little dance, call something else other than alliance or whatever, because they don't want to say that word, a group of 5, whatever.
Well, and I think it's twofold. I think it's both the AD, the coaches, the recruiters don't want to say that because the recruits are going to view that very differently.
Yes.
That's number one.
Yes.
And I think Angie and the fan base
don't want to
say it either,
because they don't want to feel like they've been diminished.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's twofold.
Yeah.
And to your point, I agree with you. I think a lot of what she's probably getting is from the football program and recruit. She talks a lot about recruiters and recruits, and that's where she's her information. Yep. So that's where that's that side that it's coming from. But there's another side that doesn't get the headlines. It doesn't get the clicks. It's not interesting, as interesting. And quite frankly, people may not like what they have to say about it. Yeah. So it's kind of twofold there, in my opinion. But
I agree with you. If I could just make one last point.
Yeah.
And I'll just reiterate, it really doesn't. It doesn't matter at the end of the day what it's called, because this is a great step. It just makes so much sense for these teams to, whether they have an alliance with the Mountain West, whether they have a merger, whether they go from one conference to the other, or go vice versa, or create a new conference. Yeah. The future, it seems pretty certain right now that the future is a partnership in some way between these teams and the Mountain West. And I really think that that's the best situation for both sides. And this is the first step where they'll start to feel comfortable with each other. Yeah. And so I think it's a great move either way.
Well, and it leads me into this next point, and then we'll get to the transfer portal. And I have to bring this up because I really scratched my head when I heard it. So this will be the second episode where I'm going to call out another podcaster. Okay. I called out Angie the last time. I'm actually going to defend Angie here in a little bit, honestly, because I don't like what was done to her.
Okay.
Here after this next little bit that I want to talk about.
I'm interested.
But I did see Trey Smith.
Okay.
Who I've talked about before, and I actually appreciated what he had to say because I felt like he had some new news.
Okay.
He brought up recently, and the headline was something along the lines of, "Is this the first step of the Mountain West's demise?" And that's not exactly how he worded it, but basically the Mountain West is in trouble. But then he goes on to his shows, and all he does is ask his viewers questions.
Okay.
So here's the question that he asked, and he double talked on this. And does it matter? No, it doesn't really matter. But I'm the Mountain West guy, and I didn't like what he said,
well, let's talk
and
about
I'm bringing it up.
I want to hear it.
So he put out this kind of silly thing. That this is the beginning of the end of the Mountain West. So he's going down the path of, the OSU, and this is what was said by Angie, and it's what got me fired up with Angie, that they're going to be poaching the Mountain West teams. Okay. And that may very well happen. I just had issue with Angie saying that's what they're going to do when that literally is just what happened to her beloved Pac-12 conference. Yeah. That was to be clear, that was my issue with Angie's comments. It wasn't about this scheduling alliance and the tit for tat P5 group of 5 versus, it wasn't about that. But anyway, Trey Smith goes on to say, is this the beginning of the end? And I think that was the headline. The beginning of the end of the Mountain West. He even puts out this conspiracy theory as a question to his viewers that Navarez is actually maybe trying to do this and can make this happen behind the scenes, so she can then become the commissioner of the Pac-12. And I went, wow, buddy, that's a step, and that very well may happen. But there's been zero, and we've talked about this for people that have seen us before. We like to live in reality, in true fact reporting, and this was just a step way too far. I felt like I had to bring this up. And then after he says that, he makes it okay because he poses it, like I said, as a question, but it's pure conjecture. There's no facts to back it up. It's frankly clickbait. I mean, he got me. I clicked on it. I'm like, what is he talking about? The end of the Mountain West. Click. Oh, you're making up conspiracy theories. Bullshit. And then certainly after he says that, he goes, well, I don't know. She seems like a straight shooter. I don't think she... Well, no shit, Sherlock. Like, there's no facts to back up this conspiracy that you're making people click on. So it just got my feathers ruffled, and I felt like I needed to bring it up.
Yeah, so... But But you said he took some kind of shot at Angie as part of that?
No, he didn't. I got the Angie thing coming up next.
Okay,
I got the Angie thing coming. That was a shot at the Mountain West.
Okay,
and I won't stand for it.
Can I reply to that real quick?
Yes.
We have seen nothing from any of the decision makers that really shows any evidence that anyone's really even working towards pulling any Mountain West teams into what's currently the pack. Now, I definitely, and I've been clear on this, I think you and I are mostly in agreement on this. I still think there's a very good chance of some kind of a merger.
Yes.
And whether it has a new name or whatever, I think there's a very good chance of some kind of a merger. And if that were to happen, they very well may pick her to be the commissioner. Sure. I think she's done a good job.
Yeah.
And I would say, I honestly think, now I haven't followed the Mountain West for a long time like you, but I would say, I think the Mountain West is in the best position they've been in a long time. They had a great season, exciting season. They have programs that are getting national attention, and they have the opportunity to either make the Mountain West or make a new, whatever the new conference is, even stronger by adding these two programs. And we're already taking the first step. And I think she's done a great job at making that possible, but without like stepping on toes.
Absolutely.
And making anybody squeamish about anything. So if she was named the new commissioner of a merged conference, I'd have no problem with it whatsoever.
And as I said in other headlines, the Mountain West are the ones that don't really need to do anything.
Right.
Now, her statement that I said earlier makes complete sense. Why wouldn't you want to expand a pound, strengthen? Yeah. All that kind of stuff, but they don't have to do that either.
Right.
They're not beholden to OSU and WSU to do any of this stuff. So, again, I mentioned before, I've been very impressed with her. I still am. I don't know. I had to bring that up because when I see clickbait crap that has zero facts behind it, I struggle with it.
Yeah.
Now, I want to mention before we get into the transfer portal, there was a headline, and this gets into Coach Smith. Okay. Obviously, as everybody knows, Coach Smith has left Oregon State. And just a few days ago, it was the end of the week, there was a headline from 365 Sports headline, which is a pretty big, I've listened to them before. I think they do a pretty decent job. 3 or 4 guys that bring people on, and Angie's been on there a few times. And the headline of this is, this is the headline, Angie Machado, Oregon State bids good riddance to Jonathan Smith.
Okay.
And I went, holy cow, I got to listen to this.
I think you sent me a link to
I want to hear what Angie has to say about this because, again, she's an Oregon State person. So I click on this thing. Steve, she didn't say that at all.
Okay.
And you know what's really funny? I went back to try and listen to it before this episode, and guess what?
They took it down.
I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
So I was going to back her up and say, if I was Angie Machado, and that was the headline with my name on it, and I didn't say anything even remotely close to that. Now, disappointed, tarnishing his reputation, which is what she said in terms of some of the things he said after the fact. That's fine.
So they drew their own conclusions to write a headline.
But bids good riddance to Jonathan Smith. That was rough, and I clicked on it because I wanted to hear what Angie was going to say about this because I thought she was going to rip him a new one.
Right.
And there was no ripping of anything. She was very disappointed.
Yeah.
But anyway, so 2 weeks ago, I'm back up here.
Okay.
Back up here real quick. I listened to a show from her on the same one, 365. They had her on. They asked her, what do you think about Smith? Is he going to stay? Is he going to go? And she said, he's here. He's a Beeve. His family's here. He has, his youngest is in, I believe, high school. He's going to stay. Now, she said, if we're going to get, again, back to this relegated to the Mountain West or have to play down to the Mountain West level, then we may see movement, but we don't see that at all right now. He knows the plan from the AD moving forward. He knows what path they're going to be doing. All indications are that he's going to stay.
Yeah.
So very positive about it 2 weeks ago. Now, in this episode, basically she said, again, it wasn't good riddance. We wanted nothing to do with him. It was just, it's disappointing to hear some of the things that he's saying. And I think she's clearly speaking for all Beavs fans.
Sure.
Some of what he said, and I listened to his press conference with Michigan State. Yeah. And, if you're as a non-biased, not a Beav, not a Spartan, I went, oh, that was a nice press conference. He said all the right things you'd expect him to say coming into a new town. But if you're the town he left, you're taking offense to some of the things that he said. And it gets back to her tarnishing his legacy in Corvallis. And, That's going to be anywhere
Yep.
where you have. I just went over what she said 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
He's not going anywhere.
Yep.
He's a beeve. He's our guy.
Hopium and copium.
And, so I don't blame her. I don't blame Beavs fans. There's a lot of emotion with that. He said that it wasn't for the money. He said it wasn't because of the Pac-12 collapse. He just wanted to move.
Yeah.
I will say, I call bullshit on both of those things. Yeah. I think money always has something to do with it, and the Pac-12 absolutely had something to do with it. And is it at this point in time, given where the Pac is it a better move to go to the Big Ten, which to your point is going to be one of the Power 2 conferences? Hell yeah, it's a better move for him. So I think the tarnishing issue is that he's saying some things that I think everybody knows isn't true.
Yeah. So I think any time when a coach leaves, the team left behind just has bitter feelings. They feel jilted. And if you compare it again, whenever we're talking about the Pac, I always go back to like divorce or whatever, And when one, let's say one spouse leaves the other, and then they start telling people how my new spouse does this for me and whatever, and everything is great or whatever. And the other spouse hears about it, the previous spouse, they're going to take that as a dig at them, It is what it is. The coaches, it's coach speak. When they go on to a new place, they're trying to say positive things about the new place and not say anything negative about the other place.
Correct.
That's a fine line to walk. You're going to piss somebody off.
It is.
So to me, the first press conference at a new place to me is just, it's all platitudes. It's people trying not to show they're excited about the new place, but not trying to piss anybody off, not burn any bridges. So it is what it is. And honestly, and that's the thing and that shows what she said before. That shows, I mean, she's more of a fan than a reporter. And I'm not taking a dig at her. It sounds
right.
Like
I understand. Yeah.
They kind of screwed her over with that headline.
Completely. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. And like I say, I couldn't even find it anymore. So maybe she took issue with it and said, that's not what I said. Now, maybe you can find it now. I just was having trouble with my YouTube searches, but couldn't find it.
And the thing is if there's anybody, fans, we're emotionally invested in our team. So we're going to believe kind of what we want to believe about our team. It's just the way it is. But if there's anybody who really looks at something, nobody is going to think that that somebody wouldn't jump at the opportunity to leave, whether it's the Pac or the Mountain West or whatever, to go to a Big Ten program. It was probably overall, if you look at Michigan State, they're in the top half probably of the Big Ten, towards the middle, but this last year they had a bit of a down year. But as a program, they went to the championship game before. Anyone who thinks that they wouldn't do that is just naive. Not naive, I don't even want to say that. They're telling themselves and their fellow fans what they want to hear. Because even the best Pac, the schools are leaving their own conference to go to the Big Ten. You can't blame a coach for doing that. And if you didn't think that they would do that with that opportunity, you're just fooling yourself and other people. But that's what fans do. We fool ourselves. We get emotionally invested in teams, and that's what it is.
Well, because they bleed orange.
Yeah.
And they think they have a coach
right
that bleeds orange just as much as they bleed orange.
Right.
And when he doesn't bleed orange the way they do, it hurts.
Well,
and I'm not just ripping Smith.
Yeah.
That's any coach that's like that. But he's a homegrown Oregon State Beeve, and they thought he's one of us. Sure. He gets us. He gets Corvallis. He bleeds orange.
Right.
Like, we aren't losing him because he's us.
Yeah.
Well, guess what?
Yeah, that's just not.
Unfortunately, that almost doesn't exist.
No, and the thing is being a coach is a job. Okay, and I tell my kids this. I have older kids. And I tell my kids this: it's called work and not play, because someone has to pay you to do it. If he bled orange that bad, he would just say, you know what, you don't even have to pay me to do this. I'll do it for free, or give me $60,000 a year just so I can pay my mortgage payment or whatever. Yeah. But that's not how it works. These coaches, this is their profession, this is their job. So if anybody, and I'm not disagreeing with you, but if someone actually in reality thought that a coach would not go from a Pac or Mountain West program to the Big Ten, they were kidding themselves.
Understood.
Yeah.
Real quick, I want to get to some transfer portal stuff.
Yeah.
So it came out on, I believe, Friday, maybe Thursday. Let's talk about Washington State. Cam Ward entering the portal. Josh Kelly entering the portal. I think he had done a few days before Ward, number one receiver there. And then sophomore running back who got some decent playing time this year, Jalen Jenkins, also right now entering the portal. Obviously, it opens tomorrow on Monday. So some big names there with Washington State. You look at the Beavs. Obviously, we talked about Coach Smith. He's gone. And DJ Ugalele, thank you. I would have botched it. He's now entered it. Now their stud back has said he's going to stay. But at this point, I look at this and say, well, who this year and who's going to be like the running back for Oregon State? This is where I'm supposed to be.
Yep.
I'm a Beaver, and I'm not sure what he is. If he's a junior, if he's going to be a junior senior, I'm not sure. But that may continue for a year or two, and then I think without solidity into where they're going to end up in 2 years. Yes, they've got things figured out now with the alliance and with pulling in another 5 Power 5 conference scheduled teams. That'll get them through another year, and hopefully they'll be able to keep enough of their core that they're very, very competitive and a very strong team. I mean, look at the Oregon State, for Pete's sake. They had a fantastic year this year. But that's only going to last so long. You're only going to have some of those players for another year or two. You have to have solidity. And I think, you get back to the decision makers. I think that is the end game for them is, okay, where are we going to be in 2 years?
3 years down the road.
Where are we going to be? This will get it. This is a bridge, as you've said before, for year 1, maybe year 2. It is only for 1 year, this alliance. Maybe it's extended for a second year. Who knows what happens after that? But, again, I keep saying, and this isn't me being against the Beavs and the Cougs, time is not on their side from a programmatic standpoint. And to keep things at a high level where they want to be, the more time that goes by without questions answered, the worse it's going to get for them.
Yeah, I think that definitely, I think having some certainty going forward, I think would be great. And I think this alliance is going to be kind of the first step in that. I think that they still have. So to me, I wouldn't put a lot of stock into the portal stuff.
Yeah.
I think the future of the program is going to play more into the new recruits, into recruiting.
Yeah.
The portal stuff, especially quarterbacks, there's guys around the country. I mean, North Carolina just lost some significant players. And
they all are.
Yes.
I mean, it's happening all over the place.
Yeah, and we're going to do some episodes, I think, in the offseason about the transfer portal, about NIL. I mean, quarterback, like these two guys, Cam Ward probably can go somewhere and make 6 figures somewhere. There are reports that Tanner Hartman left Wake last year and they went to Notre Dame, that he signed $1 million NIL deal.
Wow.
So if that guy, I mean, he was a good quarterback or whatever. Right. But Cam Ward, as exciting and electric as he is, if he were to go to a big name program and get, he could get a big deal, compete for a national championship. So quarterbacks are doing this. I wouldn't read a lot into it, especially Oregon State had a coaching change.
Right.
Yes. Even though they signed someone internally, sometimes the head coach or offense coordinator leaves, the quarterback's like, well, this is the guy I came to play with.
Yeah.
And I do think, and actually I read with DJ, I saw some quotes from DJ's dad.
Okay.
And he's not definitely set on transferring. He put his name in the portal. He wants to compare. He may go in the NFL draft.
Okay.
He wants to see what programs, like is there an Ohio State maybe that would be interested in him, or whatever. He wants to compare his different options. So I wouldn't put a lot into the transfer portal. I think that the uncertainty is more about their recruiting, which is why you have the ADs trying to use certain words, whatever.
Yeah.
And yes, I agree with you to an extent about the running out of time, but I do think the decision makers, I think the decision makers of these two universities and the commissioner of the Mountain West, I still have a lot of faith in those 3 parties. I think this is the first step, and I see good things forward for the Mountain West and for these programs.
Yeah.
I'm a Beaver believer.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hey, so with that, we'll wrap this one up. I will just say that there's a ton of quarterbacks. I mean, I focused on Washington State and Oregon State because that's what we're talking about. We could have a whole nother episode on the number of quarterbacks that have entered thus far. I mean, I don't know who else is going to. Tons of quarterbacks out there. Quality quarterbacks. Not like backups or anything like legit starters and legit ACC, like legit programs. So I'm not trying to just pick on these 2 programs.
Right.
it's all over the place.
Yep.
But again, we're talking about OSU and WSU. I want to bring it up.
Yeah, they're significant. I mean, that's
Significant.
huge.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, hey, with that, give us some comments. Not a lot of new news in this necessarily, but wanted to just kind of close a loophole, especially with the scheduling alliance. We've been talking about that for, oh, good Lord, month and a half or whatever it's been. It's finally a done deal, at least for 1 year. Wanted to talk a little bit about the transfer portal and some of the Smith stuff. We talked about that a little bit last time. But with that, hey, we'll see you next time on the Big Mountain.